Hey there, folks. Podcast producer Danks here. Luke couldn't even do this because it's so top secret. Pretty cryptic, but be at the Blues Hog spot at the American Royal on Thursday night for something wild. More to come.
OVS, Old Virginia Smoke. OVS, Old Virginia Smoke. OVS, Old Virginia Smoke.
This podcast is brought to you by the Kansas City Barbecue Store, the official provider of barbecue supplies to listeners of Pitmaster. The dog days of summer are here, which means it's prime barbecue season. The grills are kicking, and as we get in those last days of summer, you really got to make sure you have what you need. But it also means that the American Royal is right around the corner. From smokers and fuel to rubs and sauces, the Kansas City Barbecue Store has everything and anything you could want. Make the Kansas City Barbecue Store your one-stop shop for everything that you need for the American Royal. I know that I will. This year at the American Royal, we'll be doing our first live Pitmaster podcast broadcast from Kansas Speedway with the great folks at the Kansas City Barbecue Store. We hope to have a lot of teams come by and say hi, and we think it's going to be a lot of fun. So as a listener of the Old Virginia Smoke Pitmaster podcast, you can get 10% off of your order this American Royal season by using the code PITPOD, PITPOD, and for online orders at www.thekansascitybarbecuestore.com. Well, welcome to another edition of Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. My name is Luke Darnell, Pitmaster of Old Virginia Smoke and host of this show. And if you're listening to this, it is American Royal Week. And a lot of you will be driving to Kansas City this week, so it's my job to populate your podcast list and give you a bunch of different content this week. And I have to be completely honest with you, this today's guest is a super special guest to me. It's an interview I've been wanting to do for a long time. And to list this team and this man's accolades would take me an hour. But please join me in welcoming Mike Wozniak from Quau. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing fine.
It is great to have you on this show.
I'm glad to be here.
I always usually start with a story about when the first time it was that we met, and I want to say that it was in Chicago at the
Soldier Field?
No, at the contest out there by the Beanie Baby place.
Oh, Westmont.
Westmont.
Where Scotty Johnson lives, yeah.
Yeah, I believe that's the first time that we met. And I was with Carrie Luke and Darren, and I was just an upstart at the time when we met. And I think that was the year that we won day one and reserve day two or something crazy like that. And had no
Darren
business.
had a good, I remember, I think he had a grand end reserve one weekend. I don't remember what year it would have been, but he did have a good weekend.
Yeah, that's a great contest. And that was one of the first contests where we decided that it really was a lot of fun to get out there and drive around and see different places and meet different people. And so that's been kind of our thing moving forward, going a lot of places. So, well, my friend, you've been around a while, huh?
Yeah, we haven't cooked this year. We were planning on doing a couple contests. Arthur, one of our favorites, it ended up falling between the Royal and the Jack. So rather than fight those contests, they just canceled it. And so we're pretty well done for this year. And hopefully next year I can do a couple. I mean, we're not chasing points like we used to cook 45 times a year, and it was just that was a lot to do. We were hardly ever home.
Chasing points, it's funny whenever you see people get into it, especially people who have never done it before or been around a bunch of people who are doing it, and you see their mental strain, and you see them, getting agitated at a third place, and it's really funny.
Yeah, I mean, there's times when we would you'd have to win like a category or something, because you drove all that way, and a second place in a category would not help you whatsoever because you're already tapped out on points.
Yeah, and a friend of mine is engaged in it right now, and he texted me this weekend. He goes, I'm just going to start having fun again. I think that's the key. I think that's why I keep finishing third. I was like, there might be something to that, So let's get into some of these questions here.
Okay.
I know that you've been a mentor to a lot of people, and we ask a question later about, who's successful and who's influenced people who've been on the show, and you're the answer to that question from a lot of people.
Well, yeah, I hope so. Scotty Johnson put on a lot of classes, and I think I helped out at every one of them. It was for a cancer fundraiser, and I tried to instill in people, how to cook. And I did catch some shit from people. They'd say, well, you didn't give me any recipes. And it's like, well, the recipes, you can figure that out for yourself, but I want you to understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. And hopefully I helped a lot of people out with that, because there's a lot to learn. If I just give you recipes and you go out and just follow it to the letter, you're going to run into a situation where something goes wrong and you're not going to know what to do. But if you understand what's going on in the whole process, you should be able to cope with it.
And based on just conversations that you and I have had just sitting around the fire, you've done a lot of different processes and a lot of different styles of cooking.
I have, in my barn, I was looking for some of them the other. I think I have 4 or 5 different chicken cookers. My first real successful chicken cooker, it was a 12 by 12 piece of stainless. It had a handle on it, and I had stainless steel nails welded around the outside. And I would stick my thighs on that, and I'd put it in the firebox. Of course, the firebox is about 450 degrees. And then I would put 4 of them towards the fire. Then I would rotate it, and we would get really crispy chicken skin with that. In fact, we won. I think the first time we won chicken was up at Shannon, which was the Illinois State Barbecue Championship. And we used our chicken cooker, and people called it the cat carrier, because you could just put a couple cats on there and smash them down on the nails and carry a few of them that way.
You've also done some rotisserie type of cooking too, right?
Yeah, and I was going to get to that later.
We can save it.
No, it's fine. It was. You have a question here, like, what did I spend $100 or less on?
Yeah,
that really worked out. And I'm going to tell you, very few people know this, even though everything was out in the open. 2007 and 8, we were Team of the Year in chicken. And I used a La Cagicina, which is nothing more than a plywood box with aluminum, thin aluminum metal line in it, and then a tin tray on top, which you put the charcoal on top, and it's a top-down cooker. And we started using those, just playing around with them. And then I go, what if I put a rotisserie inside here? And I'm real good. I can fabricate. I can weld. I've got a plasma cutter, and I've got all kinds of tools, so I could build stuff. And so for less than $100, it was a rotisserie motor, a spit, a basket, and I had to make a few bushings and stuff like that. So I got like $45 in this thing. And so anyway, and you have to go back. In 2004, I was the first person to do lollipop chicken, which we did lollipop thighs, and they fit perfectly in the rotisserie basket. So anyway, I come up with this thing, and we would, I sat there and I practiced how long it would take to do this, because it's about 450 degrees inside the La Cagicina. Yeah. And we got it down to where it's about 18 minutes. And it wasn't a secret, and people would come around, and everybody, because we would be done cooking chicken at 11:30. We'd put it on 20 minutes ahead of time. We were done in about 18 minutes, and people knew that, but they were busy cooking their own chicken, so nobody really got a spy on us. But people would come around, they say, "What is that thing?" And there's charcoal on top, just glowing. It's red hot. And I'd say, "Oh, we keep that going just so we have charcoal, to feed the fire with. And everybody was happy with that answer, and they just went on their merry way. But we did it. We won Team of the Year twice, and then we won. At the Royal, we won chicken 3 years in a row. And I think the first couple years were with the La Caggiacina, and then gradually switched to one of those Kamados, and I put a rotisserie in it. And we also could get that about $4.50. But I never was as happy with the results of it because it was bottom up. But the problem with the La Caggia always was weather, because if it was windy, it burned hotter. If it was rainy and wet, it didn't burn as hot. So it wasn't as consistent as what you would hope it would be.
Man, that's just genius stuff. But there's many fables out there about some of the stuff that you've done. Cooking brisket on Friday.
Absolutely true. I've done it for years. And I was just talking to Parrot Head about it, because I always thought we had won, we did a resume not too long ago, and I always thought we had won chicken more times. We actually had won brisket more times. Over the years, what did we do? We won brisket 57 times.
Wow.
And that's out of, I think, 540 contests. So, we're a little better than 10%. I think.
That's amazing.
And so what we do, and I it's not a secret. I would tell these people in Scotty's class, and I don't know, if anybody could perfect it. But we would, I'd cook it real hot and fast. I would cook it in a pan, and I would inject the shit out of it. I mean, I'm not going to, tell you what my injection is here and everything. And so we would and the rub would be fairly simple: salt and pepper and paprika. I'm a real firm believer that you don't put, real delicate spices on things at the beginning of the cook, especially brisket. You're cooking the hell out of it, and you're just going to burn all that stuff off. Always add the delicate flavors later, once you slice it, or, when you get towards the end. So we'd cook it up to about, I'm thinking about 195, 187 to 195, like that. Then I would wrap it, and we would put it in the Cambro. Now, what happens is, and I would preheat the Cambro. I got those discs that you heat in your cooker. And so the Cambro is 170 degrees, and the temperature in there drops very slowly. So you end up in that sweet spot where the collagen is starting to break down. And so I leave it in there 4 or 5 hours. And then, it's in foil. And then when it's been in there long, we take it out and throw it on ice. Ice on the bottom, ice on the top, and just stop it. So now the collagen's pretty well broken down. And all you have to do at 5:30 in the morning is throw it back on and bring it up to about 210. And I'm telling you what, they turn out perfectly consistent every time.
I remember the first time that I heard about that, and I was like, man, that is genius. Just to get something out of the way like that before turn-ins on Saturday is really clears the mind.
And a lot depends on getting inspected right away. And there's a lot of content. The Royals, they were always good about, they would inspect right away. But you get some of these other smaller contests, and sometimes it's hard to get inspected. So I had to change the timeline, but it just means it goes on ice a little bit later, But
yeah. So you are a brilliant person, brilliant cook. How has your career and life experiences outside of barbecue prepared you to be a pitmaster on the competition trail?
Well, I've always been really, really competitive. I raced motorcycles for 11 years. I was 2-time district champion in hare scrambles in Illinois. And then, in 1985, I was at work and got my hip broke real bad. And that ended my motorcycle career. And so then I found out about cooking competitions. We had a rib fest in Peoria. And I entered that, and we didn't do worth a shit in it. Actually, the first contest I ever entered, one of my friends had a burger cook-off. And this was a long time ago. This is, late 80s. And everybody had their grills there. And, I knew I didn't want to do that. Everybody's cooking these hamburgers the same. So I took a propane burner and a cast iron skillet, and I made what I called Black Castle burgers. I try to imitate the White Castle method, and with you put a little bit of oil in there and a little bit of water and steam the buns, and you have these little thin patties, and we end up winning that contest. So that was our first introduction to competition cooking. And then we did the rib thing, and that's where I met at the Peoria Rib Fest. I met Mike Lake. You know Mike, right? Or do you?
Yes. Oh, okay. I know Mike. Yeah.
Yeah. I met Mike Lake, and he was telling me, he was there vending, and he's telling me, he goes, "Oh, you need to come do the Shannon contest." I put it on. It was the Illinois State Barbecue Championship. And he goes, "We do chicken, ribs, pork butt, and brisket." And I go, "What the hell's a pork butt? Does it come from the ass or something?" I had no idea. I didn't know what. And I said, "Brisket." I said, "I'm only familiar with brisket you would have around what is it? Corned beef brisket?"
Yeah, corned beef and cabbage around.
That's all I was feeling familiar with. So anyway, in 2000 we took the judging class up. Mike put it on. It was up northern Illinois, and that next spring I built out of a 300-gallon tank. I built a cooker, and so we went to Cairo, Illinois, and there was like 30 teams, and they were paying 10 places. And I'm thinking, Jesus, how hard could this be to get at least one top 10? And found out it's a lot harder. Especially when back then we didn't have the internet. You had to get a book or something, at a bookstore to learn how to cook barbecue. So we went down there, and I think we did get a 12th place in ribs, and that was our best finish. And I didn't understand, how to time management. And I basically was up all night, and then driving home, I'm drinking Mountain Dew and stuff, trying to stay awake. And we had the family with us, and everybody's, punching me in the shoulder to keep me awake. And so then we did another contest in Iowa after that, and we won first place in what you call an ancillary, it was a appetizer.
Yeah.
And then we did 5 contests that first year, and at the end of the last contest we did get I think 3rd place in chicken. At the time we were doing, and I still have all these things. I made them. They were like beer can chicken. I made them out of water pipe. And so you put beer and stuff inside there, and then cook the whole chicken. Then you dissect it, and that's still a good way to do it, because the skin's on there and it keeps the moisture in.
Yeah, that's cool.
A long time ago.
Long time ago, yeah. That's so funny, because the only thing I knew about brisket was corned beef as well, because my mom would make it every St. Patrick's Day. Everyone in barbecue loves to talk about everything they won. One of my favorite things to talk about are failures. Do you have a favorite failure of yours during your contest where something happened or you did something wrong and you really learned from that experience moving forward?
Well, they used to have what they call, it was supposed to be the equivalent of the Royal in the spring. It was called the Great American Barbecue, and it was in Kansas City. And I think there was about 200 teams there. And we were cooking really well at the time. We were right up there and everything. And I don't know what I did. I don't know if I just didn't think about something, but I would take my ribs off when they got too hot, and I forgot to put them back on. And then when we went to prep them to turn in the box, I go, "Oh crap, these aren't even close to being done." And I think that was the only time we ever got dead ass last in a category. And they were just, at that point, you don't have time to do anything, and you just put them in the box.
Yeah. Those are tough situations, and we've all had them. What's been the most surprising thing to come out of competition barbecue for you?
Well, I think the most interesting thing, you mean personally?
Sure.
Okay. Well, we got to travel an awful lot, and the children were younger then and stuff, so we got to see a lot of things that we would not have been able to see, uh, if we hadn't been doing barbecue. We made a little in summer, especially. We made a little vacations out of it. We cooked in Washington D.C. a couple times. My son got run off by the police for skateboarding on Freedom. I think it's Freedom Plaza.
Yep.
And then so then we did Lake Placid a couple times, and the trailer is literally parked on the old outdoor ice skating rink where Eric Heiden won 5 gold medals, and then right up the hill is where the Miracle on Ice took place in 1980. We cooked in Daytona, the Daytona 400 parking lot, the Talladega 500 parking lot. We got to go to like the Devil's Tower and Yellowstone and the Badlands, and we saw, like the Crazy Horse Memorial, and
Yeah.
you just get to see a lot of stuff you wouldn't normally see.
They have moved the Lake Placid contest down to the horse park.
Yeah, I know where that's at. Yeah.
Yeah, they just this was the second year it was down there. We went up there this year again for it. And it's my wife's favorite contest. She loves that place. But I did get to cook on the speed skating oval, and there is nothing like it in barbecue.
Yeah, it was a neat place. And you know what amazes me is they held the Olympics there twice, the last time being 1980. It's really a small little town. You just wonder how they fit all those people into Lake Placid.
And we were lucky enough to go there this year, and they're actually preparing for this worldwide college games right now. So everything has been updated. All of the Olympic venues have been updated, and it's just the change they've made in the town just to get ready for. And yeah, but I 100% know we drove in there, and I'm like, this place had the Olympics. This is impossible.
It's amazing.
Yeah. This podcast is brought to you by BarbecueData.com. BarbecueData.com is your one-stop shop for all of your barbecue competition data. Historical data, calls, wins, placements, everything under one roof. It's a great way not only to track yourself in the standings, but also to track how you improve your scores from year to year. Listeners of this podcast can receive 20% off of a new subscription to BarbecueData.com with the code PITPOD. That's one word, all capital letters, PITPOD, PITPOD. So check your team scores, check on others, and do it all on BarbecueData.com. All right, I'm going to ask this question because I just want the advice myself. What advice would you give to a smart, driven young cook who's about to enter competition barbecue? What advice would you give them?
Okay, when you start out, and most people start out this way, they oversmoke and undercook.
Yep.
And we were guilty of that too. You can't be afraid to cook stuff. We used to cook stuff. It would take us, we'd start there right when we got there, and it would take for hours and hours and hours. And, I don't do everything hot and fast, but, that's one of the big mistakes you make. What else? I had some other stuff written down here about that, the advice. The biggest advice, and I always gave this at Scotty's contest, is if you really want to be a competition cook, you have to cook every weekend. And the reason being, you need that feedback, especially at first. Now, I always told this at Scotty's because I said, yeah, okay, I know you cook on the weekend at home, you give barbecue to your friends, your relatives, and what do they say? Oh, this is the best shit I ever tasted. Well, they're damn lying to you, because what are they going to do? They're not going to tell you it's terrible because they're getting it free. So you need the feedback from the judges because those are the only ones that count. And there again, if you do have a bad experience with the judges, you can't go by a single event, because we all know there are tables that are worse than others. So if you don't, and I've seen people do it, they'll have a bad outing at a table and then they want to change everything, for that particular category. And you do not want to do that. You want to give it a shot 2 or 3 times before you start changing things. But I know one of the questions on the list was, what advice I got personally. And the best advice I ever got, and it's worth repeating, it was from Byron Chisholm from buttrub.com, and we were pretty good friends with him for years. We just don't get down south very much. Byron said, take whatever your worst category is and work on it till it's your best. And now you'll have a new worst category. You work on it till it's your best. And you just continue that cycle, and you will really improve your cooking. And we took that to heart, and we worked on stuff. Pork for a long time was not our favorite category, and we were mediocre in it. Then in, I think, 2010 or 11 or 11 or 2 years in a row, we were pork team of the year.
Wow.
So, we got there.
Huh. Maybe we'll have a offline conversation about pork after this is over.
I'm on the rules committee, and I mean, the pork rules have changed, but still the methodology of cooking it, is still the same. But, I would have wished they would have left the rule like it used to be, where you had to cook a minimum of 5 pounds. But because, if you look at the USDA definition of barbecue, it's large, tough cuts of meat that are cooked low and slow over wood or charcoal. And we've kind of gotten away from that over the years. And the barrels especially have, they're attributed to the really hot and fast cooking. And It works. I mean, it works well. And you don't have to do low and slow. Hot and fast does work if you know what you're doing.
I've had conversations with many people about this pork rule, and I think it needs to go back too. I think let's get back to cooking whole butts, and let's stop making it easier. Let's make it more traditional and more what it's supposed to be. I get sad when I cook pork now because I'm like, this isn't a pork butt.
And with the 2 years we were team of the year, we did pulled pork in slices. But what I would do, I'd cook the pork. I'd put it on about 7 at night. At the bottom, and the Peoria custom cookers I have, there's 3 chimneys on them. So there's different heat paths. Yeah. So I would have the heat path go all the way down, and I would set it to like 210 all night, and that meant down at the bottom, away from the firebox, it was about 170 degrees. So those butts would just sit there on the rack at 170 degrees for all those hours, and then when I'd wake up, they'd be about 150. So I would finish them off on the top, and we got beautiful pork. Money muscles would come off them. I'd separate them out with my hand, and then we pull them off and slice them. And it turned out really good. And you can still do that. It's a lot easier just to cook a money muscle. You can do that in just a short period of time.
Yeah, and it changes the whole dynamic of your cooker. It changes everything. So you don't have all that mass in there from the pork butt. And
right.
And it's something that I think I'm overthinking it, but we'll talk about that later.
Well, and you hit on something that's real important. It's like when you go to a contest and they want you to cook some butts to give out to the public. And it's like, yeah, I don't know if I want to do it, because what you said, when you start doing something outside of the ordinary and you're adding more meat in there, it does change the characteristics of the cook. And so I never liked doing it. So what we would do is I try to get the butts, or if they wanted us to do it, I'd try to get them ahead of time, and I'd cook them right away when we got there. And we'd carry a cooler with us and a bunch of newspapers. So I'd put the butts, I'd wrap them in foil after they were done, wrap them in newspaper and throw them in the cooler and just leave them there all night. And when they came around to get them, then I just hand them to them, and I was done with them. They weren't bothering me anymore. So
I've learned whenever that's required of me, that I cook it on Tuesday and cool it down, vacuum seal it, and then just retherm it in the trailer, and here's your 2 butts. And then I don't have to worry about it. What do you think? Now, let's ask this one first. What's missing from competition barbecue these days?
We were talking about this. It used to be way different back in the old days. We would sit around on Friday night, and now a lot of people get there late, and so they're prepping their boxes and everything. But back in the old days, everybody got there on Thursday. We'd go.
Right.
One of my favorite contests was Mobile, Alabama. we'd get there early Thursday, and they had parties and stuff like that, and we'd sit around talking, telling stories. I used to tell stories about my mom. That everybody always enjoyed them. My mom was the most horrible cook you can ever imagine, and but anyway, and there's a lot of stories about that. But I'll tell you what, barbecue has changed, and I will give you my theory on this, that television has changed barbecue. You know, as someone who cooked back in the early 2000s and then all the way up until basically now, and I've had people ask me, they go, so the cooks have changed? I go, no, it's the judging. I said, okay, these like Pitmaster shows, people see like Myron Mixon, Melissa Cookston, Tuffy Stone, and they go, man, I could do that. Here's Tuffy holding up a burnt end, say, there's too much fat on here, it needs to be rendered out. Well, but they all fail to understand is those three are fantastic cooks. They know more about barbecue than 99% of the people. So you're not going to be able to just, think you're going to get on TV judging barbecue. It's just not going to happen. And it's really funny because, I mentioned the thing about Tuffy. I remember him holding up a burn end, and there was a glob of fat on. He said they failed to render that out. And actually, it wasn't anything you could render out. It needed to be trimmed off.
Right.
And so, like 2 or 3 weeks later, it wasn't us, but somebody got a comment card, and it said, it was almost verbatim. It says, you failed to render the fat out of this, the square cube. They didn't even know the proper name. And so anyway, that's what I think changed, because they started to be very critical, because really the TV show, when the judges are up there and they're judging whoever brings their meat up and stuff, they have to be critical of things, because that's part of the show. You got to say, well, this guy could have done this better. Well, that's not part of KCBS. And as a rules committee member, we would get questions all the time from cooks. They go, I saw this on Pitmasters. I saw, at the time you couldn't part your pork. And they go, I saw Diva, and she had her money muscle hanging on by just, a thread of pork. And it's like, well, first of all, Pitmaster is not KCBS. What you see there, it's completely different. So
right.
there was really this transition, and a little bit of it was about cooks, but mainly it was about judges, what they saw on TV, and they thought that's what it meant to be a judge, is to be very critical, just like Tuffy and Myron and Melissa were. And, they actually know what they're talking about,
We had a couple years ago, I think it's not just barbecue on TV. I think it's also just cooking shows in general, Food Network. We had a contest here in Virginia, and I got a card and it said, not enough umami. And I'm like, okay. So then it starts spreading through the contest. This guy wrote 14 comment cards, all umami based. So we're walking around, and somebody would yell out, I don't have enough umami. Another person like, I had too much.
Can you get me some umami? That is something that most people wouldn't even know about, because they don't read cookbooks, but they saw that on television.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but back in 2006, there was a bunch of us that were on a television series. They don't show the reruns anymore. It was, can you see this?
Yeah.
Okay.
The
barbecue championship series. Yeah, I'll hold it.
Yep. Kingsford.
Okay,
yep.
And it was out in Reno. It was they did it in the alley behind one of the casinos, and it was during that big rib burn they have out there. Okay, which I think that was just a couple weeks ago. Anyway, so like Joe Davison, Myron Mixon, Johnny Trigg, Byron Chisholm, Adam Perry Lang, and some other people. We were out there. what was interesting about it, and I just want to tell you the story because it's really a good story.
Okay.
We did 3 categories. The first category was a big meat. You cooked it on your own pit that you brought. And the second 2 meats you had to cook on pits they provided, which, some of them were just shit. But the third category, you had to go to a big aquarium with a net and fish something out of it that was alive. And they had, I got my first round, I got trout. They were alive. I knew how to, do fish. My dad used to fish. We lived on the Illinois River, so I knew about that stuff. And then the second time I got lobster. But Byron Chisholm got live bullfrogs. Now, he didn't know how to dispatch, because all you're cooking is the frog legs.
Right.
So he didn't know what to do. And there was a couple other people actually know what to do. They just grab the frogs by the legs and hit them on the table, and that would kill them. Byron didn't know what to do. And the thing is, we had an audience. We had bleachers, and we had a jumbotron. You imagine this big jumbotron, and they're focused in, and Byron just, oh my God, I don't know what to do. He set the frog down. He put this big butcher knife behind the head and just crunched down. He cut the head in half. And people were getting up from the bleachers, and they were like gasping and running. And that's why you'll never see any live little creatures on any of these Pitmaster shows, because the year we did it, it was just too gruesome for the audience.
That's amazing. I wish I could find that footage somewhere. I'd watch it.
I think they still. I think we bought these a few years ago. I think they still have them.
Nice.
But the problem was it was on Versus Network, and so like all the stuff said VS Versus on it.
Yeah.
And then the outdoor channel bought it, and so it would be too hard to edit it so that it didn't say Versus on it anymore.
Yeah.
That's why they haven't done the reruns.
That's unfortunate. I know people. So people are. It's good that we've got another barbecue show going right now with Barbecue USA with Michael Simon. They're going to do another season of that coming out, and yeah, it's good to get our hobby back out into the spotlight a little bit. There
was one episode I didn't quite understand. It might have been Gadsden, where they go, the top 2 or 3, go on and do like a finals table. And then they talked about it, but then they never even showed it. They go, well, the first round, that's the main thing anyway. They never even talked. Maybe you remember that.
I do, because we were confused as well.
Okay. Well, I wasn't the only one confused. It's like, wait a minute, we're getting cheated here. There's something missing.
Yeah, we had no idea what was going on because it was done under Alabama Barbecue Association or something. Yeah. Their rules, and yeah, we were kind of, I don't know. It was hard to follow, but still the content was really good, and Michael Simon did a really good job with this. Let's switch gears a little bit here into gear. What's one of the best or most worthwhile investments that you've made in competition barbecue?
Well, like I said, doing the La Cadrecinas, that, invest, those were like $165 a piece. I had 2 of them. That was a real cheap investment, and we were really successful with them. But as far as the big investments, like I said, I'm real good at fabrication. So I had an Oklahoma Joe, and I didn't like the way it cooked so much because I burnt so much fuel. So over the winter, I took and I insulated the firebox, and I changed the way the air came in. I noticed that when we were done burning, I would burn wood and charcoal. There'd be all kinds of chunks of things that were unburned. And then I got looking, well, I realized the air is just coming in right from the back. It doesn't go under. You always want air to come in under a fire. Fire burns up. And if you burn from the top down, you start to smother things. So I changed that. Right away, we start burning only 1/4 of the fuel that we were burning, and it would be a fine ash. And we ended up on that cooker, we got, I think, 22 GCs on it.
Wow.
And then Bill Cusack here in Peoria, who owns Peoria Custom Cookers. He's also a dentist on the side, but no, that's his main job. But he owns they fabricate cookers. He came to me and he says, we'd like to build you a cooker. I said, well, I can draw it up exactly what I want. And so they built me an offset cooker with an insulated firebox and an insulated cook chamber. The firebox has 3 inches of insulation in it, and the cook chamber has 2. It was kind of difficult for them to fabricate it because the doors now had depth, 2 inches of depth.
Right.
So you have to angle the sides in so that when it heats up on the inside, it doesn't stick. So they did that, and we ended up with a cooker, which is what we won the Jack on, basically. And we did really well with it. But we had about 22,000 in just material.
Wow.
And anyway, he decided that really that wasn't it was too hard to build the thing because it was a round, cook chamber. And so what he did, he started building rectangular ones. He used that same firebox and used an insulated square box, and that was called the Meat Monster. And we got a couple of those also. And when we were cooking a lot, we had the motorhome. We pulled a big cooker, and then we had one of the Meat Monsters mounted on the back of a trailer for long distance. And those were some of the best cookers there ever was. The big one, I had a ball valve on the end of it, and I could set the ball valve just to the bone of my thumb, and that thing would just sit there at 275 degrees all day, all night. And then finally, and this was I think I got it in 2005, and then in 2007, I decided to try a Guru, and that even made it more steady. The insulation in the firebox and the cook chamber, it really slows the airflow down. And that's something I taught at Scotty's class. When meat stalls out, I don't know, what kind of cooker do you use? You got a Jambo or?
Jambo, yeah.
Okay, that's why you probably wrap it about 3 hours, I would imagine.
Right around there, yeah.
Okay. The reason is it stalls, and basically it's almost like a human being sweating. At when you reach an internal temperature, the meat starts to aspire moisture. And so when you have a lot of airflow, like through a Jambo, and I mean, it's just the nature of that kind of cooker, you start to lose moisture, and it actually brings the temperature, at a stall. So that's why you wrap it, and, you don't have to deal with stall. But in cookers that are really well insulated, like the Deep South, the Stumpies and stuff that are, gravity feed, and these Peoria Custom Cookers are so well insulated, they have very little airflow through them, so you don't have to worry about stall. You never have to wrap. The last time we wrapped ribs, it was like 2007 or 8. I haven't wrapped ribs in that many years. We do wrap brisket, and that's just I've never been able to cook a brisket without wrapping, and I tried. I just couldn't do it. Pork, we used to, when the years we were pork team of the year, we never wrapped pork at all. And of course, you don't wrap chicken at all, but we had chicken down to where we were doing it in about 18 minutes. Now, I would tell you this also with chicken. We were one of the few teams that turned in white meat along with dark, and we did it, the whole time we cooked. And so when people come, they would always, they knew we did, a lot of them did, and they'd say, well, I'm going to the Jack. I qualified for the Jack. What do I do? And I would explain to them how to do white meat. And if you want, I can go into that a little bit. I don't know.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask, are you doing breasts or are you doing wings?
No, the secret, we always did breasts. I would buy whole chickens and I would breast them out, but I would leave as much, I would just, sacrifice the rest of the chicken, take as much skin off so I had something to wrap around the breast. I then would tie that. So, because skin holds the moisture in really well. And then, on your firebox, you can burn that skin. And then we set it aside and inject it after we burnt the skin. That way you get some nice color on it for the next day. But anyway, so at the Jack, you're required to do 7 pieces. Mm-hmm. Now, if you do that in chicken, and I know a lot of people, they'll think, well, I'll just throw a wing in there, along with my 6 thighs. It's like, you're just going to get your ass handed to you.
Yep.
And we have a good record. We got a third. I think we got a couple fifths and a 10th at the Jack in chicken. And to be honest with you, twice we used Cornish hens. So, but the other times we used lollipop thighs. But anyway, so on the white meat, we do this thing where we wrap it and we cook it super hot, and then we slice it. We got a slicer in the trailer and stuff like that. But here's the thing: if you just turn in one little piece of white meat, you'll get your ass handed to you. So what you got to do, you basically have to put 12 in. You need 6 pieces of white and you need 6 dark. And if you don't do that, you're just going to get scored down. And the other thing you absolutely do not want to do, you don't want to chop up white meat and put it in the bottom of the box. I mean, I've judged the Jack, and if you do that to me, I'm just going to give you a shit score because that's just being lazy.
There's so many little nuggets in there of.
I'll tell you about sauce too. If you want to, we got a trophy up here. We got a 3rd place trophy in sauce. They give you a little styrofoam cup. Okay, take white vinegar because styrofoam's got a shitty. It gives off when it warms up. It gives off a little gas and stuff. So take white vinegar, wipe it out, shake it in there, let it dry out. Get your sauce, whatever it is, kind of lukewarm, and pour it in there. Now you got to use Jack Daniels in it, right? So take a paper towel, soak it in Jack Daniels, and then wipe the lid. And then put the lid on, take it, and turn it in. Now, when they open it up, what do they get? They get a whiff of Jack Daniels, but it's not in the sauce.
That's brilliant. I'm going to have to, there'll be a lot of people who'll be listening to that.
Well, I'm probably not going back to the Jack. So, it's like, was it 2 years ago? Parrot I went with him because I've helped him before and he's helped me and stuff. So, I helped him with chicken because, I said, listen, I've done this more than any. I've cooked white meat more than anybody in KCBS because we do it every week. And so we did the white meat, and he did some that was kind of basted, braised.
Uh-huh.
And, we cooked the other chicken like I do, where we tie it up in the skin. And I think he ended up turning the stuff that, I came up with. And I think that was his best category. But don't put little drumettes or wings in there. Just put show them you know how to cook. And here's the other thing with white meat. They say to cook it to 180. That it's crap if you cook to 180. You have to we cooked it really hot. I cook it at 400 to get it going because we're talking about a big breast, something like that big around. And so then after about 15 or 20 minutes, we take it off and we put it in the main cooker at a lower temperature with a probe in it. And I'll tell you why you have to have the probe in it. If you use a thermopen, when you go through that outside, which is really hot, it'll give you a false reading. Because it took us a while to figure that out. It's like, God, this chicken, it should be done. And it'd be raw on the inside. So anyway, we start just using probes that were in there all the time. Yeah. And you check it with a thermopen and completely different, readings. And the reason is thermopens, I don't think they read real well at lower temperatures because you have to determine on that breast what your overrun is. So if say you stop at 140 because you're cooking it hot, you got to know what it's going over to, and then you got to work your way backwards. And you don't want to go to 180 anywhere near it. But we always injected the shit out of our breast, and it was really good and juicy.
Huh. Now I got to try that. So you've already answered the purchase of $100 or less. You got any other good nuggets there in that realm?
Well, like I say, nobody ever figured out what we were doing, and we were just.
That's so funny.
These wooden. I mean, I don't even think we cook using the turkey size, which I don't think they make anymore. They make a whole hog one. They do make a smaller one that's made of metal. But these are things you order them. They come in a box. There's a bunch of wing nuts and stuff. You just put it together. I think it was $165, and then they're really cheaply kind of made, but they hold up. And we had one for the motorhome and one for the trailer, and we took them around. And I'll tell you what, last year at the Royal, I took it down there and I cooked my chicken and I pork on it. I had been practicing pork doing like 4 pound, what do they call them, CT butts.
Yeah.
And I had been practicing at home, and they were turning out fantastic. But what we were doing at home, we'd cook them, and then we'd throw them on ice to stop them. And then, then the next day I'd heat them up because I was trying to go through exactly what we'd be doing at the Royal. And for some reason, I don't know, I lost my head down there, and I forgot to throw them on ice. I just left them in the Cambro, and then when we heated them up the next day, they were just mush. So it's like we were really screwed on pork, and that was by far our worst category. And we hadn't cooked in over a year, and our brisket still got about, I think, 50ths, which at the Royal, that's not too bad.
That's pretty good
for not having cooked.
Absolutely.
And so.
Well, this next set of questions is about people, and I'm dying to know who has impacted your life the most in competition barbecue.
Well, like I said, Byron's little advice there about cooking, taking your worst category and cooking until it becomes your best category. That's probably the best advice I got. But when we started out, we didn't know anything. I didn't know what a pork butt was and all that. I had to read cookbooks. And so there was a few teams. Smokers Wild, they're retired now, out of Kansas area. Raccoon Flats, they're out of Des Moines, and again Byron Chisholm. So and the thing was, it just needed simple questions answered. It's like, okay, I'm doing pork. How do I slice pork? What do I have to do to slice pork? Now you guys get on the internet and you can find out exactly what temperature to cook it to. But nobody really knew that stuff back then. You had to read books, and so you'd ask them that, and they said, well, just you cook it. You cook one butt to a certain temperature and another butt to another temperature. And then like Raccoon Flats, they were at the Jack several times, and they've been retired for quite a while. But they helped out with like sauces and stuff, and the big thing is I learned how to do bone-in pork loin from them. One of the big contests here in the Midwest was the Great Pork Barbacoloso. And it was grandfathered in, so you still got points for ribs and pork, but you did also whole hog and pork loin. So anyway, we messed around, did pork loin, boneless pork loin. That really didn't work. And then so I talked to them. They go, yeah, do bone-in pork loin. Once we started doing that, it was like brand new. And so we won pork loin twice. I think we cooked it probably somewhere around 9 or 10 years. We won it twice. And the last time we won it, the GC was $10,000. I mean, because they got money from the pork board.
Right.
We won whole hog out there once, and hog is just you might as well just take your car or your cooker to the car wash afterwards, because it's just a mess.
It's a giant
fat
mess.
And meat everywhere. But I don't really want to cook whole hog anymore, but if I have to, I will. But yeah, we pork loin, we won it twice, and we won whole hog at the Barbacoloso. But remember when they had the swine flu come through the United States, which had nothing to do with pigs? So people quit buying pork, and all the money dried up for the contest. And I think 2009 or 10 was the end of that contest. It was a contest.
When you hear the word successful in terms of barbecue, who's the first person that comes to mind?
Well, I'll tell you, there's a lot of people, but the one that really led the way in KCBS was Johnny Trigg. Yep. I know he's about 100 now, but he's still cooking there sometimes. And I'm just joking, that. But when we started cooking in 2001, Johnny came up here and cooked all the time in Illinois and Iowa, which is where we cooked. So, he was the man to beat. And I remember, it took a few contests, but then we, like the second year, we would start to beat Johnny in a category or so. And we were really proud of ourselves until we realized, well, yeah, but he's winning the GC and we're still down the list of ways. And so it took us a long time. And, finally, we started to get to that level. And Johnny was always a pretty good guy. We always talked, and we were pretty good friends. And, he cooks. I think he's cooked once this year. I'm not sure, but I don't know if he cooks in Texas at all or not. But Johnny really was one of the pioneers in the area when we started out, and there's been a lot of people since then. But he was probably one of the first ones that was really a superstar.
He's yeah, I love that man. He and I have got to spend some time together, and I just cherish every moment. He's hilarious.
I did get, when we were out in Reno, he was in the first round with me. And so when I forget what we did. We cooked, I think, whole chickens. You had to cook them whole. And then I forget what the second category was. And then the last one was trout. And I ended up beating him for our round by just a little bit. So I eliminated Johnny when in Reno in 2006. But,
I'm sure he's forgotten about it.
Probably.
Probably not.
There was a lot of people who forgot about that. Myron Mixon's famous line was he cooked venison tenderloin, and he goes, "Yeah, that's the second time I've cooked it, the first and the last." And I know he hated cooking because, venison tenderloin is so lean and you've got to cook it real hot and fast. And I'm not sure he hit it right, but there was some weird stuff we had to cook. They had some kind of, what's those fish down in South America that got the teeth? Piranhas?
The piranhas, yeah.
Yeah. Then somebody got stuck with piranhas, and that was hilarious too to watch. But you can find the disc. I mean, there's some funny crap on it.
I'm going to have to find it. Are you a superstitious guy? Do you have any habits or rituals or routines that you got to do when you're at a contest?
Well, the only ritual, as I got older, I wanted to get as much sleep as I could. So by doing the brisket, we'd have our brisket done and on ice usually about 5 or 6 p.m. And so then we really didn't have to do too much till the next morning, or I'd put pork on at night, but at a real low temperature. So my superstition was just getting to bed about before 10, and I'd wake up at 5. I needed that 7.5 hours of sleep. And some of my friends always joke about that. I go, "Did you get your 7.5 hours of sleep?" And I always did for the most part.
So important, man. It is. That's the one major thing I learned. The first time I went, or the only time really, that I got to go do the King of the Smokers thing. And I'm looking around at 2 a.m, staring at my backwoods, and I'm the only one out there.
Yeah.
And everyone comes rolling out of bed at 6:37, lights their pits, and goes on their way. And I'm like, I looked at my wife and I said, "We got to figure out I was like, all these guys got a full night of sleep. I did not. And it's made a huge difference in the way that we cook."
Well, and the big thing to me was driving home, especially after, I don't know, you ever heard about the Wiener Dog incident?
No.
We were coming out of Grand Junction, Colorado, and we had a pretty good cook there. And there was a cop alongside the road, and he has lights on. And I slowed down. I was only going about 30-something, and we're on I-70. And so I put my blinker on to go over in the other lane, and all of a sudden I look up and there's a utility truck, and he just slams on his brakes right in front of me. Well, I got a trailer, I can't stop that quick, and so it peeled up the passenger fender, peeled off the tire and everything. And come to find out, people down over the hill, they had a Wiener Dog, and the thing had constantly, it's not when the first wreck it caused. It was like the third one. The damn Wiener Dog got on the road, and the guys in front of me, rather than just run the damn thing over, they slammed the brakes on, and they did like 10K, damage to the Dodge.
Oh.
And so then we're cooking the next week in, where was it? In Alabama. And so anyway, we got a flight home, and luckily, we had two Dodge trucks at the time. And so we got home, and I slept, I ate, and then Monday morning I was there and picked up the trailer. I went over the damn Rockies twice in one day. And when I finally got back over on the other side, coming home, I just stopped and I just put the seat back as far as it go, and I slept for I don't know how many hours. But we got Decatur, Alabama. So we got we got down there and cooked Decatur, and I had her, my wife, she went and picked out, all the meat and garnish and everything. So, when I got home, all I had to do was prep. But, that's the kind of shit we did back then. You were just dedicated. And, like I said, we would cook 40, 45 times a year. We were home sometimes only 2 or 3 days a week. Sometimes we would be gone. We did a swing where we would, and I was never afraid to do this. I would prep meat, vacuum pack it, and in the trailer we have a 12-volt. It's a /cooler/freezer. We'd set it for 28 degrees, and so I do three contests worth of meat, and we would put 2 of the week's contest in that thing at 28 degrees. So we would either do like Rochester, Minnesota, or Gillette, Wyoming, and then in the middle of the week, the Montana State Fair, they'd have that. So we do that like on a Wednesday and a Thursday, and then we go down to Worland. So the only problem was garnish. Sometimes garnish wouldn't last very long. And in Wyoming, you can't find any damn parsley.
Right.
So, and this leads to another little thing I'm not sure you're aware of, but let's see if I can find it. So anyway, Parrot Head, a good friend of mine, and we came up with, why can't we use kale, right?
Yeah.
We go, look, this stuff lasts forever, and they sell it everywhere at Walmart and everything. And so, here's a little kale.
Kale.
And if you can read it, let's see, where's my name? Right there. Can you see? Mike Wozniak?
I can.
Yeah. So we pushed, and it, being on the rules committee, it took about 2 years because they go, well, we already have all this stuff. We have cilantro, blah, blah. It's like, nobody uses cilantro. Just forget that crap. And so anyway, there was a lot of people that were reluctant. They go, it's a cabbage. It'll stink when you put warm. And of course it doesn't. You'd have to scald it or something. But so anyway, we go, look, and I explained it over. And I said, look, we cook out west sometimes. We go out to Montana. We go out to Wyoming. You can't get parsley out there. You just can't. And so, but you can get kale everywhere at Walmart and it's in pretty good shape. So finally, reluctantly, we got it passed with the rules committee, and then the board adopted it. And it's been a rule now for 7 years that you can use kale. Yeah. And we always used it. I know a lot of people use it, and you can really thank Parrot. He was the one that really suggested it. And then I pushed it through. Do you use kale? I don't.
We go back and forth between kale and parsley, and it really depends on how much shit I want to get from my wife. She loves kale boxes. She hates parsley boxes.
Because kale boxes are really easy to do. Yeah,
they are. And if I'm by myself, especially, I'm probably going to do kale because I can bust out 4 boxes in like 25 minutes and I'm ready to go.
Well, let me tell you who to blame for the damn parsley boxes. When we first started cooking, you would just take lettuce and you would punch it into the corners. You would just kind of, border the box and put a little bit of lettuce in the bottom. And literally they would give us your boxes Saturday morning. And you would build your box as you're putting the meat in it. Okay. Right. And then Donnie Teal, Donnie Teal.
Oh, yeah.
I think him and Smokers Wild. I don't know which one started, but those are the culprits there that began all this crap where they make the putting green with parsley. And so if you want to blame anybody for that, that's who to go to. And maybe I'm wrong, but I think I'm correct. And so anyway, then, and I always hated building boxes. I hated doing parsley. If you couldn't get good parsley, it would take you forever. So I'm glad we do kale. And I don't think we even buy parsley anymore. I think we just buy the kale, and we do do a little bit of lettuce.
Oh, man, that is a great story. I can't wait to yell at Donnie Teal about that.
He'll deny it, I guarantee it.
Oh, he denies everything.
It's like there was, they had to pass a rule that you can't use the core of lettuce in the box.
Yeah.
Now, I've always heard it was Parrot Head, and he'll deny it. And I don't know what the truth is, but that's who I always heard put the core of a lettuce in there, and then, you have some leaves going out and stuff. I don't know.
Well, we're gonna have to plan to do a part 2 of this because we got through about half the questions, if that.
I told you
And
I could talk about. Well, yeah, I mean, I've been doing this a long time, so I know a lot about, and I got a lot of stories, and there's a lot more that we didn't get to, but
well, let's if you'll agree to do a part two, I would love to do it.
yeah,
Um,
let's wait a while, and we'll do it in a few weeks if you want or
that'll
something.
be
Or
awesome. But I do want to ask.
I actually get better reception with the signal here on Zoom in the winter when it's cold.
Okay.
We hit a good day here. It's high pressure. We've had all that humid heat here last
Yeah,
few days, and then the front came through. So and
it's coming through here right now.
well, and that's like when you're. Have you ever cooked at altitude?
Yes.
Okay, we cooked in Dillon, and I think it's like 9,000 feet. And I remember I couldn't even get the the little butane lighter to light to get the
Yeah.
I had to go borrow matches from somebody, and it was just weird. We put
It's a
everything on or the big meats on an hour early, so weather
it's
affects stuff.
it's a huge thing. It's we cook this contest in Wise, Virginia every year, and you're not up that high, but you're up higher than you usually are where we cook. And I mean, sometimes when the front blows through, you can feel the barometric pressure drop. And there was one day it happened right like around 10 o'clock on Saturday. And you just heard everybody kind of bitching about, hey, this brisket, it's not coming up. And I'm like, I've seen this before. She's done. Get her out.
Yeah, we had I bought one of the things so I could put two of the big Guru fans on for when we cooked at altitude.
Yeah.
So you get more air going through. And that's really the only thing we ever changed. But yeah, it is difficult. And I screwed my kids up on the kids queue. It only takes like 6 minutes to cook a steak. And I thought, well, we don't need to start the fire yet. And when I tried to start the fire, the damn thing, I couldn't get it lit. And they scored down a little bit. I thought they were going to win, but they scored down because I couldn't get the damn fire lit on there. They gave all the kids, one of them little grills that are about 18 inches.
Well, let's get into these rapid fire questions.
Okay.
Here to wrap up. What do you see about barbecue on social media that upsets or bothers you?
When people put boxes up and ask other people to judge them, and they're super critical, and they're going, well, the color, it's not quite, consistent or anything. It's like, Jesus, this is barbecue. What's wrong with you people? It's not a painting by Van Gogh.
Right. That also annoys me. Do you have any favorite pre, during, or post competition meals?
I'll tell you, we used to do at the Royal, and this was my favorite thing. We'd cook a prime rib, and we'd invite people. One of my friends from Des Moines would come down to help, and you had to watch him because he'd go into the trailer and he was cutting the spinalis or the rind off the prime rib, and he was eating it, and we had to stop him and say, "You can't just eat that." But no, I actually we're pretty good at cooking prime rib. In fact, the Jack asked us to do a recipe for him, and they used it in one of their brochures.
Oh, that's cool. Do you have a favorite present that you like to give to people?
Well, I like to fabricate things. I do a little woodworking and stuff, and I make little gifts and stuff for the kids for Christmas and stuff. Like see this thing?
Huh.
It's an
Hold on a
amplifier
second, I
for a
lost
phone.
you.
You stick your phone in right here, and then it's got a wave amplifier. I mean, it's not electronic or anything, but it works like an old phonograph. And when you want to listen to something, so I make stuff like that.
That's awesome.
Right now, I'm building my man cave. Our barn has an apartment in it. It used to, for the barn manager, and because it used to be a horse barn. And so the first room is going to be my cigar room. I've got it all pretty well done. I'll send you a picture when we get it done. But it's a man cave, the cigar theme, and I love cigars.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, you're gonna have to definitely send me that whenever you get it done. Last question: if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it Getting a message out to millions. What would it say and why?
Okay, I prepared for this. Okay, this is a quote from George Plimpton, and this quote came from When We Were Kings. It was a documentary about Muhammad Ali and George Foreman when they fought in Zaire. Ali won, and convincingly, but he wasn't supposed to. And he went on and kept fighting way past his prime, and he ended up with Parkinson's and stuff like that. And George Plimpton was one of the narrators of the documentary, and he says, as it happens with people who love a thing too much, it destroys them. And then he goes on, he says, Oscar Wilde, who was an Irish poet, said, you destroy the thing you love. And he said, that's not the way. It's the other way around. What you love destroys you. And there's some truth to that with barbecue. How many people do you know lost their jobs because of barbecue, or they got a divorce, or their girlfriend left them? I know I can go down a list. I can name a whole bunch of them. I can name one of your good friends that used to be in logistics in a trucking company. And he was told, and this is a quote, and I remember it. He said, they told him, it's too bad that your job interferes with your barbecuing. And that guy turned around. I'm sure it was a good thing for him, because now he's one of the most successful restaurateurs in the area. So I think you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
And he's been extremely successful. So I'm sure that he doesn't care that he's not in logistics anymore.
I have a similar story myself. So.
Well, we just have. I know I can name about 10 of them that they were said. That's just too bad. This interferes with your cooking so much. And one guy gave up being a plumber, which is he probably shouldn't have done, because he had a union card and stuff. But
well, Mike, I want to thank you for being on here. This has been a pleasure. I can't wait for part 2. We're going to miss you this week at the Royal, but we'll be thinking about you.
Well, I appreciate you giving me an opportunity. And like I say, I told you when we spoke before that I can talk and fill up time. So I have no idea. I guess we've been talking for an hour or so.
Oh yeah, definitely. But we definitely have another hour in us. So we'll get to it here in a little while. And thank you again.
Okay. Thanks, Luke. Nice talking to you.
Yep.
Take it easy. Good luck.
Thank you for listening to Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast. Be sure to subscribe and like the podcast, rate the podcast, and to share it out with all your friends. Also, be sure to check out the Old Virginia Smoke YouTube channel as well. Tune in next week for another great episode of Pitmaster. For companies interested in advertising, please contact Old Virginia Smoke directly via www.oldvirginiasmoke.com. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is edited by Chris Sedenka. Pitmaster, an Old Virginia Smoke podcast, is a property of Old Virginia Smoke, LLC. All rights reserved. Copyright 2022.
Old Virginia Smoke.